From the time I was a little girl in kindergarten, I've had an unhealthy obsession or fear about dying, about death. I can remember as a kindergartner worrying and worrying and worrying because my dad took high blood pressure medication. And so I was just convinced that he was going to die of a heart attack. I thought my mom had Alzheimer's and that she was going to die from that because she was constantly losing her keys, which I totally get now as a mom. And I've got very fair skin and I always sunburned very easily. So every time I would get a new mole on my skin, I was convinced that I was going to die of skin cancer. So all of this from a very early age, there was just a lot of angst and anxiety and fear that I had about death and dying. And then just a few years ago, I realized one day that I was no longer afraid. I no longer had that fear of death and of dying. And I really thought about it, what was it that made that switch in me? And I don't know that I can tie it to a moment, but there are 3 things that I want to share with you today that I hope will help you, that I have really clung to, and that have been great sources of peace for me when thinking about the topic of death. And by the way, if you didn't watch today's message by Pastor Schlee about punching fear in the face, all about death and dying, you really must, because you'll never think about death in the same way again after that message. But here are 3 of the things that I've come across over the years that I just want to share with you and I hope will be helpful. The first is a quote by Pierre Teilhard de Chardin, and I read this, several years ago, and I've never thought about my human life in the same way since. He said that we are not human beings having a spiritual experience. We are spiritual beings having a human experience. So think about that. I think we just flip that around all the time. We are spiritual beings who are simply having a temporary human experience. We existed before this human life and we will exist after this human life. What a comfort and what just a new perspective that is, and that gave me, and I hope that gives you. The second is a few lines from one of C.S. Lewis's books from the series The Chronicles of Narnia, which is one of my favorites. This is from book number 7, The Last Battle, and he's writing about some kids who pass away. And this is what he says. All their life in this world and all their adventures had only been the cover and the title page. Now at last they were beginning chapter 1 of the great story, which no one on earth has read, which goes on forever, in which every chapter is better than the one before. That's you and me, my friend. Our life on this side of eternity is only like the cover and the title page of forever, of the living story that God is writing in our life. What great comfort that is to know that this time here, this temporary time, is just the very, very beginning. And then the last thing I wanted to share with you was something that I wrote a few years ago. And it's how I think about living this life and about passing through this life on my way to heaven. And it goes a little bit like this. And you, with the weight of being your own rescuer off of your shoulders, and with your darkness resting squarely on his, you now have a way to dance with one foot in this world and the other foot standing in eternity. Your future beyond this human body rests securely in the loving arms of God. Your rescuer gave you that gift. And now you live the rest of your limited days in this world, responding to that great sacrifice of love until you fall asleep and wake to see your rescuer face to face. We are spiritual beings having a temporary human experience. All the days of our life on this side of heaven are only the cover and the title page of the living story that God has for you. And you have a way right now to live the rest of your life dancing with one foot here in this life and the other foot in eternity, knowing that the best is yet to come. I hope that this was helpful to you. May you always be still.